There's so much opportunity when it comes to investing in property. Today, we will be discussing how to start your property journey in 2024.
I mean, everybody wants to invest in property. However, we do not know where to start. So today we're going to be talking about the two main strategies and the three things that you need to consider before you start investing in property.
So watch until the end so that you can invest like a pro.
So when it comes to rental properties, we are basically saying that we are going to be buying a property with the option of leasing it out to people. So if someone wants a place to sleep, I will be offering them a place to sleep. Now on the other side, we have flipping. Flipping, which ultimately means that I'm going to be buying a property at a very low price and then I'm going to sell it at a higher price.
And it's very important for us to understand the pros and cons of these strategies, because with the rental, you're looking at getting cash flow, whereas with the flips, now you're looking at getting capital gains. So it's very important as a first-time beginner to understand what do you really want out of the game so that you can then choose a strategy that works best for you. Because I know where we are right now is that we know that we want to move into a big deal. And with that being said, is that we knew that it's going to require a lot of money. So now the question is, do I have that money? If I do not have that money to invest, I know then I should be flipping in order for me to ultimately go into that big deal. So let's go back to now the rental, right? Now with rental level, there's two options that people really need to be aware of, especially as beginners, that there's your properties whereby you're cash flowing positive and there's properties that you're cash flowing negative. What would you say is the difference between the two?
Can this business run by itself? So if I do not put in money into this property, will this property be able to pay itself off? After paying itself off, will it still allow me or give me some sort of income? Now, some sort of income might range from property A to property B, depending on how much you're going to be investing in. Now, there are some people that have, after all expenses, have 10,000 left. There are some people, after all expenses, they only have 2,000 left. Now, that's a cash flow positive property. A cash flow negative property would be a property that leaves you without money and still requires you to take out money on a monthly basis towards this property just to balance off those expenses. Now, going into properties that are cash flow negative will obviously mean that it's not going to be sustainable, because if you do lose your job, then you won't be able to manage this property.
Yeah, for sure, man. Because I remember even with us that there's a couple of deals that we've seen whereby when they were pitched to us, it's a long-term game. That's how it was pitched, that after 20 years, that's when you'll start seeing profits. But now my question is, what is profit? Because if I have been taking out 3,000 every month, looking at it from a yearly perspective, I would have taken out 36,000. Now the question would then be, what's going to happen next year? Because now I'm finding myself in a situation whereby my expenses is more than my income. So this 3,000 that you mentioned is coming out from my pocket. That is 36,000. So now if I'll be looking at that case, looking at it from a 20-year perspective, I would have taken out 720,000. Now, the question is more of, if I was saying that I was playing a long-term game, was this an investment or not? Because the other question would then be that, did that property really appreciate to more than 720,000? Because if it didn't appreciate to 720,000, I can find myself in a situation whereby if I am to sell, I would be running at a loss. So in that way, hence we're saying that as an investor, we need to be very careful in terms of what type of properties are we buying, especially if they are for cash flow purposes.
With flipping a property, what you want to do is that you want to buy a property at its lowest and then you want to sell it at its highest. Now, the thing about this is that you won't be able to see it if you do not have the experience behind it, right? Now, what do I mean by this? On Property 24, you can scroll over through the first page and you might see properties that are ranging in terms of prices. But now you will find a property that's way below other properties, right? So say for instance, if you're scrolling down on Property 24 and you're seeing that the properties range between 750 to 900,000 in a specific area. Now, if you then see on the second page, you click on the second page and you see that the first property there is selling for 350,000. Already over there, you know that you do have a deal. Now, it is not as easy as that, because Neo likes to say that it might take 3 months for you to actually find that deal for you to invest in. So now, at the end of the day, the main premise of flipping property is that we need to buy it at its lowest and try to sell it at the most profit that we can actually get. Now, the problem with this is that a lot of people tend to become greedy, or some people overcapitalize on their investment. So what I mean by this is that if the value of a property is sitting at, say for instance, 800,000, and you want to sell the property at 850,000. Now that's number one, being greedy, right? Because we should have understood that by the time we buy the property, the most that I can sell this property at, it's 800,000. Now, the second part of overcapitalizing comes when someone has actually bought this property and they decided to put all of these beautiful things that are really expensive into this property, only to find out that when they do sell the property at 800,000, they won't be making a profit. Sometimes they don't even break even. So now they are then forced to sell at 850,000 in order for them to try and recover that money. But now the problem is, by that time, or when you do want to sell it at that price, you can't actually sell it.
And the rule of thumb is simple with that. When it comes to property, according to non-wealth, is that every distressed property is not an investment. So therefore, we need to take into consideration everything that you said so that we could be investing like pros.
Of course.
Sure.
Now, the three things now. The first one is creating a budget. And now I know that it sounds like a cliche. Everybody's saying that obviously you need a budget. Now, your budget ties up with your strategy very good, right? Now, what I mean by this is that some people are just focused on buying properties whereby it's the owner that had a story. So for example, if the owner is going through a divorce and they just want to sell their property, right? They don't care how much they're going to be getting, they just want to get it out of their hands. Now, in that way, chances are sometimes the property won't be in a terrible condition.
Yeah.
Now, if that's the situation, then you already know that, okay, these are the properties that I'm looking for. Now, sometimes you find Neo and Lebu that do not mind working, right? We do not mind working, and then we are saying that this property is in terrible condition. Nobody's looking to buy this property. However, we are willing to actually spend time, say for instance, 1 to 2 months, fixing this property and making it look good. Now, this ties up directly with your strategy and how much you have. So say for instance, if you only have 100,000, then you know that you can't go for the worst property in that particular area in terms of structural damages. You can't go for that. Maybe what you would go for is something that is as clean as just painting, right? Then the budget can actually fit you. Now, the worst thing that you could ever do is to buy a property that needs so much work, only to find out that you do not have the budget to fix that property.
Lewu, you've done both strategies, which is rental and flip. Now, I've got an interesting question that will help our viewers to understand this better, right? Which one is more cash intensive, if you were to say, between flipping and rental?
Yeah. So the one that is more cash intensive, I would say, is that neither flip or rental is cash intensive. The thing that makes it cash intensive is the property itself that you're buying. Now, if we are saying that we are buying a property that is in good condition, I mean, we're almost in that deal, right? Whereby the property was in good condition, however, the owner just needed to sell the property.
Yeah.
Now, in that case, we know that had it been for rental, it was still going to be good. Had it been for flip, it was still going to be good. Now, either or, it was actually going to be good. Now, the problem becomes that a lot of people look at flip and always think that I need to put in work onto this property, whereas that's not the case.
But then can we say that with flip, one must be prepared to spend a lot of money, because you've been in those projects whereby, man, you just stepping in, you know that you have to do the whole kitchen, you know that you need to do the bathroom, you know that you need to paint the whole house. Whereas if one is looking at rental, and then they'd be like, let's just say that the property wasn't in a really bad condition. In that case, you would then say that flip is really cash intensive.
I mean, that would be correct if you're looking at it from that scale, in terms of if you want to do the best finishing touches on the property, right? Because when you're looking at most of the time with people that are actually renting out properties, what they would rather do is to put in the most basic things in that property, so that because they do know that with people that are renting out properties, chances are they might be messing up with my property. Now imagine you put in those expensive taps only to find out that someone came with their child and they broke that tap.
Yeah.
Now that might be a problem when you're looking at rental and putting in the most the best finishing touches. So I would
Sure.
say you're correct in saying that with flip, you want to make it sure that everything is on point, so that when the person just buys the property, they move in.
That was actually my follow-up question that I wanted to ask in terms of
And read your mind.
in terms of, yes, we are saying that flip is cash intensive, right? But then with rental, would you then want to do the most minimalist changes towards the property, because somebody will be living in that property.
Will be living.
There's going to be wear and tear. Now the question would then be, if you have the latest taps again in that place, how long will it take for you to get your money back? And however, the thing about the different markets when it comes to rental is that we need to be aware, because there's some markets whereby those Tivoli taps are a need.
Yeah.
There's some markets whereby a jacuzzi is a need.
The underfloor heater, it's a need.
The underfloor heat is a need. So if you are not offering those services, now you're finding yourself in a situation whereby your property is vacant. I mean, you see this a lot even with your Airbnb, because a lot of people are not really understanding that Airbnb is really competitive. Now, because you're looking at it in its most basic, simple terms, you're looking at it in a sense whereby some people, when they get to an Airbnb, they don't want to be feeling like I'm at home. They want that experience whereby I can feel that I'm outside, and I understand value for money. I'm getting value for money. Because now if your property is just like the other properties, then you're finding yourself trying to compete and trying these new things whereby it's not really hitting. Number two, considering your risk tolerance. So when we're speaking about risk tolerance, we're talking about how much can you take. It's one of those UFC fights. The thing is, when you're looking at this case, right, Lebu, I mean, we were in a situation last year whereby there were criminals that went in their property and they took almost everything. And at that time, we we had to take in that extra 150k to fix again.
Yeah.
Now, when you're looking at that, the beating that we took, man, from that project, it was a lot, because we still haven't recovered today. But fortunately, we knew that that wouldn't take us out of the game. So some people would be in a situation whereby, let's just say that their affordability is 2 million. And let's just say that they had about 400,000 stashed somewhere. So they bought a property worth 2.4 million. But now when you're looking at their risk tolerance, is that if my tenant would leave for 1 month alone, I'm in trouble. So the thing about property again is that, remember, it's not like selling phones whereby if I didn't sell 5 phones today, tomorrow I'm going to sell, instead of 10, I'll sell 15. So when you're looking at a year, it has 12 months. Now, if you didn't have a tenant for a property that's going for about 2 million, let's say that 20,000 came directly from you for about 3 months, that's like 60k, and you knew very well that this is something that you can't afford. So again, when it comes to risk tolerance, we are factoring in finances in terms of how sustainable is the business, and you're also looking at worst case scenario. What's the worst thing that could happen? And if it does happen, will I still be able to run my business?
Now, let me give you an example of the risk tolerance, right? We recently went to go view a property. So this property was vandalized. And now with it being vandalized, the back property, or the property at the back opposite, was also vandalized. But it was vandalized to a point whereby they removed even the roof. The roof wasn't there, the ceiling wasn't there, electrical, plumbing, nothing was there. Now they're actually coming for the bricks on that property. Now, if you're looking at risk tolerance on this particular property, and you're thinking about going into the property, number one, you need to understand that you can never leave the property unattended. Because if you do leave the property unattended, you can't be shocked when they have actually come through and vandalized your property, right? Now, if you're looking at that particular situation, the risk tolerance for me was just like, I do not want to be involved in this property, because I know how painful it is for someone to come through and vandalize your property, right? Now, for me, the risk tolerance was just like, I do not want to go into this property. However, you might find someone else that would be like, you know what? Because a lot of people are not seeing value in this property, because a lot of people do not want to buy a property that is being vandalized, I'm willing to buy this property that's vandalized and also get someone to live in this property, so that I know that my investment is actually safeguarded. So number 3, let's look at exit strategy. Now, with exit strategy, a lot of people miss the point. And the reason why I'm saying a lot of people miss the point now is that people purchase properties without looking at an exit strategy. Now, what an exit strategy basically means is that if your main reason of buying a property was strategy X, if strategy X doesn't work anymore, am I able to switch to strategy B? Now, let's put this into context, right? If, say, for instance, right now we are renting out a property, right? And we are saying that we are using the Airbnb strategy, which will fall under rental. If I am not able to fill up this property for at least 15 days and actually get my money, will I still be able to keep the property? Now, keeping the property might mean rent it out to a single family and it still makes sense. It might mean renting out to multiple people in that property depending on how big your property is. It might also mean selling the property and still making a profit. Now, where a lot of people miss it is that they buy properties with only one strategy at hand. Now, when that strategy doesn't work anymore, we then are caught between a rock and a hard place. That what do I do now with this property? Because should I sell this property, I'm going to be running at a loss. If I rent it out to a single family, I'm going to be running at a loss.
Yeah, man. I mean, we've all heard that saying whereby, Lebo, burn the ship. In terms of, I'm going to go there, I'm going to an island, and I'm going to burn the ship, and I'll make sure that it's going to work out.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work when it comes to property. Burning the ship doesn't work when it comes to property. This thing of you only have option A and will make it happen, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Because you find out that the rentals in that area is at high. Right? Now the question is that what more can you do if the rental was really high and now but the numbers are still not numbering? You can't do much.
Yeah.
Because now you can't be in a situation whereby your rental is 20,000 and everybody's at 10,000. However, it's still the same number of rooms, it's still the same number of bathrooms. So ultimately now you're finding your property being overpriced. Ultimately, it goes back to understanding the market before you buy. Do not understand the market once you're in it. Understand it before you buy to avoid a situation.
Yeah.
So if you want a one-on-one consultation with us, we'll be more than happy to sit down with you and make sure that we tell you more about our mentorship program which takes about 3 months. It's really thorough when it comes to understanding property investing. And our aim, it's simple, is to make people really understand the basics so that we can take better decisions when it comes to investing like a pro.
Invest like a pro.
With no out.